If you've been experiencing the same patterns coming up over and over again in your life when it comes to your relationships, your work life, your health, then you're going to want to tune into this video because we're going to be talking about a way to interrupt those patterns that you probably haven't considered before. So often we think that our thoughts and our feelings are under our conscious control. Or if we feel like they're part of this so-called subconscious mind, we need to bring them to our awareness, and then we need to choose new thoughts and feelings and beliefs. And while this is true to some degree, if we dig deeper, these emotional patterns don't really lend themselves as well sometimes to just these cognitive exercises because it's our bodies that are actually running the show. So if we don't learn to release those patterns from our body on a physical level, and we don't learn how to exercise conscious control over the way that we hold our bodies in terms of our posture, then our bodies are going to continue to dictate the emotions that we habitually experience. I'm Karina, I'm a health and movement coach, and welcome to my channel where we discuss practical ways to elevate our wellness from a mind, body, soul perspective. So what do I mean when I say that the way that we hold our bodies influences how we feel emotionally? Well, more specifically, the alignment of our spine influences how we feel and also who we perceive ourselves to be and how we show up in the world, our state of being. So that could be a state of victimhood where we feel like the world is out to get us. It could be the state of someone who feels like they need to exert power over others to get what they want. Or on the other hand, it could be the state of someone who feels like they can be their authentic selves and still be loved, or the state of someone who is confident in their own abilities and confident in their ability to attract abundance. You've probably heard about how body language can make us feel a certain way and portray a certain image of ourselves to the world. So, for example, if our shoulders are hunched up, then we look and feel sad and defeated. And if our shoulders are relaxed back and our head is held high, then we feel more powerful and in command. But it turns out that there's a bit more to it than that. Finding alignment isn't just about striking a pose. Social psychologist Amy Cuddy did an experiment where participants placed their hands on their hips and found that this boosted testosterone and boosted their confidence in their abilities. But other researchers found that the study wasn't necessarily replicable, meaning that when these researchers did the same study with different populations, they didn't find the same results. Now, it's not that this effect isn't real, at least from my view. I have found that it is, both in my own experience and in working with clients. But shifting your alignment patterns in terms of your bodily posture isn't just about striking a pose. There's a lot more to it than that. Because striking a pose is not going to address all of the underlying mobility restrictions that have been at play for years. So let's take a look at what posturing without genuine alignment actually looks like using this same example. So let's say you have a habit of hunching your shoulders. You've done it for your entire life or for a lot of your life, so you're not aware of it. And then someone tells you, oh, you need to relax your shoulders back. So you throw your shoulders back, but you're not addressing the underlying mobility restrictions, specifically in your spine, that are causing this hunched forward posture in the first place. So what's going to happen is when you roll your shoulders back, you're also flaring your ribs, you're also pushing your belly out, you're hyperextending your lower spine, and that shearing of the spine over time can cause vertebral disc issues. It could cause osteoarthritic bone spurs. So the hunched over posture is a response to a comprehensive set of spinal mechanics that need to be addressed holistically. If you want a deeper dive on this specific postural misalignment of hunched shoulders and how to create genuine openness in the heart space while still keeping the rest of your body in alignment, then you can check out the video that I have linked here, which goes deep into this specific topic. Spinal alignment on the most basic level looks like maintaining the three natural curves of the spine. We have the lower spine, also called the lumbar spine, which is supposed to have a natural upward curve to it, more of a convex curve. And then we have the upper spine, also called the thoracic spine, which is supposed to have a slight rounding just to counteract the upward curve of the low back, so not too much rounding. And then we have the spine that supports the head, going from the base of the neck up to the base of the skull. And that also is supposed to have a natural upward curve. But what happens with our modern lifestyle is that these three curves are thrown out of whack by sitting in chairs and tucking our tailbone under, by looking down at our phones. So what can happen with a lot of people is that the whole spine becomes rounded. Or the curves just might be over-exaggerated, where the lower spine is hyperextended and the upper spine is overly rounded. And because the upper spine is overly rounded, then the cervical spine, the spine that supports the head, is hyperextended as well, and the head starts to jut forward. Ultimately, there are endless variations of spinal misalignments that can occur, and each one of them has an associated emotional pattern. Now, this isn't to have us judge ourselves or to feel like we're broken and we need to be fixed, because we all have these patterns. This is just to help us to shed light onto our patterns so that we can bring ourselves back to physical and emotional balance by restoring the natural curves of our spine. So the best place to start, if you have an overly rounded upper spine and rounded shoulders, which so many people do, is to check out that video that I linked before that I'll link here again. And then another great place to start restoring the natural lower curve of your spine is to sit with a neutral pelvis and make this be your habit, whether you're sitting on a chair or sitting on the ground. I highly recommend sitting on the ground as much as possible because it's a lot easier to sit with a neutral pelvis when sitting on the ground than when you're sitting on a chair. And specifically, in terms of a neutral pelvis, what you want to look for is that the frontal hip points, those bony points at the front of the pelvis where you would naturally put your fingertips if you're putting your hands on your hips, that those are aligned with your pubic bone like so. So notice as I tuck my tailbone under, then the pubic bone actually comes forward of those front hip points. And then when I hyperextend the lower spine, the pubic bone comes way behind those frontal hip points. So we want to make sure those 3 points are aligned. And if at the beginning you find it hard to find that neutral pelvis, maybe because the hips are just too tight, then I have a video on how to release tight hips that's linked here. Lots of helpful exercises there. In addition to finding the physical alignment through the exercises and the mobility work that we just talked about, we also want to recognize that our postural alignment patterns are not just a cause of how we feel, that is how it's showing up right now, but they're also a reflection of the emotional responses that we've had in past experiences in our lives. Let's take my example, because I have been through a variety of postural patterns that have all reflected the emotional states that I was going through at various stages of my life before I became conscious of this. Several years ago, I was in graduate school. I was on track to work in government, living this very by-the-book life, and I felt really constrained. I didn't feel self-expressed. And my posture reflected that. My shoulders were rounded, my chest was caved in. I just felt like I couldn't be my true self. I remember in a hot yoga class, I was trying to do camel pose, which is when you arch your upper back in a hot yoga class. And my body was so resistant that it felt like it was screaming at me. Fast forward a few years later, I had left my government job. I was starting to teach and coach. I was deep into a vinyasa yoga practice in my free time where I was doing all these intense back bends. But because I had not addressed those underlying mobility restrictions, I was hyperextending my spine. I was flaring my rib cage. So I felt free and self-expressed, but I also felt tired and anxious. I felt like I had to go it on my own. I felt overwhelmed. So I needed to find a balance between these two energies. On the one hand, feeling like I was constrained and not self-expressed, but still feeling supported and in a comfort zone. And then on the other hand, feeling like I could authentically express myself, but not really feeling supported. So in addition to doing the mobility work and using the alignment tools that I teach on this channel, I also started to tap into what it would feel like emotionally and energetically for me to move into this state of being able to express myself authentically while still feeling like I was being honored and supported. What would it feel like if my friends and family accepted the new path that I had chosen? What would it feel like if I had sustainable energy to pursue this path? And as I continued to realign my physical body, it also got easier for me to move into and remain in that emotional state. So I was doing the emotional, energetic work and also the physical work, and they were both influencing and reinforcing each other. The science behind why our emotions are tied to our postural patterns and spinal mechanics in this way is really interesting. The first part of this is that our spine houses our central nervous system. And generally speaking, an overly rounded spine is associated with the parasympathetic nervous system state, the rest and digest state. So we can experience positive emotions from an overly rounded spine, like comfort and security. But we can also experience the negative side of that, experiencing emotions like grief, even depression, stagnancy. And then an overextended spine, on the other hand, is associated with the sympathetic nervous system state, the fight or flight state. So we can experience, again, positive emotions of excitement and motivation, but also the flip side of that, experiencing negative emotions like anxiety and overwhelm. We need to balance the energies of action and rest. And one of the best ways to do that is to find those natural curves of the spine. And that doesn't mean that we're going to be feeling amazing all of the time. We're still going to experience those polarities of emotions from time to time. That's part of the human experience. But as we find more balance in our spine and in our emotions, we find that we're not stuck in those negative states. The second part of this is that we have certain nerve bundles that are located across particular segments of our spine that are associated with certain emotional themes. So for example, the celiac plexus at the mid-back corresponds to the solar plexus area of our body, which is associated with the emotional patterns of self-esteem. The pericardial plexus at the back of the heart is associated with the themes of giving and receiving love. The brachial plexus at the base of the neck across the shoulders that innervates the shoulders is associated with the themes of speaking our truth and authentic self-expression. And we also have our fascia. Fascia are the connective tissue that surround all the parts of our body, our muscles, our organs, our joints. And this fascia, this fascial system, can store emotional memories. So if we experience a traumatic event, for example, the fascia can actually constrict in certain parts of our body. And that also contributes to some of the postural misalignments that we are currently experiencing. So as we do some of the mobility work that we talked about earlier, and that I have on other videos on this channel, you're also releasing the fascia. When we optimally align our spine, we're neither overly rounded nor overly extended. And that allows us to find balance between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system states of the body. That means that we feel powerful and free while also feeling grounded, supported, and connected to ourselves and others. And this also helps us to create the lives that we want from a place of more freedom. Because when we are in this space of wholeness and balance, that means we're no longer trying to fill up our lives with the things that we think we need based on attachment and anxiety. We're free to choose and create the things that we genuinely want to experience. Realigning the spine is at the core of what we do in the Superhuman Level Health Masterclass. So if you want to learn more about what optimal spinal alignment looks like and how to find it, you can join that class, and the link to do that is in the description box. And in that class, we also go over the nutritional piece, because fueling our body with the right nutrients to support our bones and our joints is essential. If we don't have that piece, or if we're experiencing inflammation in our body because we don't have the nutrients that we need, it's going to be a lot harder to find optimal alignment. So we go over that as well in that class. It's very comprehensive. You can change the way that you show up in your life and the kinds of patterns that you attract by working with your body. So much so that the people around you might not even recognize the new you. And as a result, you'll start to attract situations and relationships that reflect this newfound state of greater wholeness. If you found this video valuable, please give it a like and share it with someone else who might resonate with this message. And if you want to learn about more ways to feel absolutely amazing in your body and your mind, then feel free to subscribe to this channel. Lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon.